necessities that I've just explained to you.
No
Therefore,
necessities. What I keep
okay.
going.
Well, that's one of three, one of four. So, okay. Well, I'll
Okay,
allow you
what is
to
it you're
get
searching for
some
here?
close
What is it you're searching for? For a
articles relating
rape
to the
that
offences
happened in St Albans?
in 2020. This is the allegation that's been made to us. Okay, sir.
There's no necessity.
Yes, there is.
So I've only been a police officer for 20 years.
Right, David.
Do you want me to come naked like this?
No, just understand you're under arrest.
I know
Okay.
I'm under
Just
arrest.
explain to us what do you need.
Hold it like this. Don't
Right.
worry about it.
Can one of my colleagues go and get you stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you wanna? Yeah.
Yep. Which one's yours?
It's the back one.
Okay.
Sake.
Are you in the address in your home?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Where are your keys? Then we'll bring those at least.
Davy Carrick was born 4th of January 1975 in Salisbury, Wiltshire. At the time of his birth, his parents, a cleaner and a Royal Artillery soldier, lived at Bulford Military Camp. After the birth of his sister, the family moved to Durrington. Carrick went to Durrington Comprehensive School, where he developed a passion for martial arts, enjoyed skateboarding, and was described as popular with plenty of girlfriends by one school friend. Carrick's parents divorced when he was a teenager, and he grew to be increasingly difficult, and at 16 he moved out of the family home. He worked in a co-op supermarket before going on to serve in the Royal Gloucestershire, Berkshire and Wiltshire Regiment and the Royal Logistics Corps. Prior to joining the Metropolitan Police, Carrick was reported to the force over alleged burglary and theft at his ex-girlfriend's home, but the matter was dropped when he agreed to return the items and pay for the damage caused to the property. The same partner then reported him over alleged malicious phone calls, but Carrick was not arrested. Despite both incidents having been reported, he still went on to pass the Met's vetting system and became a police officer in August 2001. During his probationary period, Carrick faced further allegations that he had harassed and assaulted an ex-girlfriend, but no action was taken other than being spoken to about his behaviour. Between 2002 and 2008, he worked as a response officer for Merton in southwest London, which was his first posting. The Met received 5 complaints from the public regarding his conduct, including unnecessary use of CS spray, unprofessional behaviour, and aggression during a stop and search. Friends believe that Carrick enjoyed the power of being a police officer and recall how he would often flash his warrant card during nights out. Carrick's first known rape took place in 2003, 2 years after joining the Met, when he invited a 20-year-old woman to his flat after telling her that a housewarming party was taking place. When they arrived, however, there was no such gathering, and Carrick would go on to hold her against her will for hours. Carrick had made the woman believe that she was safe with him because he was a police officer, before raping her while holding a firearm to her head.
The prosecutor described how Carrick met one victim in a bar and lured her back to his flat. There, he held a gun to her head and raped her. And he put his hands around her throat and told her he'd be the last thing she saw. Then he raped her again, several times.
The prosecutor said the victim went to hospital with bites, bruises and bleeding. When she told a nurse she'd been raped by a policeman, the nurse advised her it might not go to court. Put it behind you and move on.
It was nearly 20 years until the victim felt the courage to approach police after seeing his name in the media in connection with another sex attack. One of Carrick's victims was a female officer after being assigned to a traffic patrol team. The woman, now an experienced detective, recalled attending Carrick's flat share in South London to find a messy bedroom and photographs from his time in the army. She consented to having sex, but was instead anally raped and felt scared he would become increasingly violent. She went on to report the rape in 2021. Following the rape of his colleague, Carrick met a barmaid in 2008. She later joined the police and they purchased a house together. He would go on to rape her multiple times during their relationship. The following year, Carrick was assigned to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Unit. Within months of being given a firearm, he was accused of abusing a girlfriend, but the case was dropped when the victim and a third party no longer wished to proceed. Later the same year, Carrick attempted to rape a married schoolfriend following a school reunion event, before meeting a further 2 victims at a martial arts club. In 2015, he raped another schoolfriend he became reacquainted with via a dating app. 2 years later, he underwent another vetting process, but only declared a single incident, that he had been given 3 points on his driving licence for speeding. Between March 2017 and January 2019, he continued to work as a police officer and raped and abused a mental health nurse he was in a relationship with. He hit the woman with a whip and shut her in a small cupboard as punishment, while whistling at her as if she was a dog. Carrick raped a cleaner in 2018 and a further 2 victims he met on dating websites. He was arrested in July 2021 after one of the women contacted Hertfordshire police, but no further action was taken when she dropped the complaint. In October 2021, when a victim was inspired by the words of Sarah Everard's mother after she was raped, kidnapped and murdered by another Met officer, Carrick was finally charged with an offence. As the incident was reported and his name appeared in the media, another 5 women came forward reporting abuse. Carrick was arrested at his home address in Stevenage, where he tried to belittle the arresting officers and reminded them he had been a police officer for 20 years. Carrick didn't give anything away during the interview stage, answering either no comment or that he didn't remember what went on, and to this day has not explained why he treated women the way that he did. After his arrest, Carrick was suspended from police work. He initially pleaded not guilty, but the women that came forward all had unmistakable similarities in their statements about what happened, plus supporting phone messages and data. The women shared how Carrick manipulated them physically, sexually, and mentally. Victims described how Carrick would make derogatory comments, calling them his slave or a whore. He called them fat, wouldn't allow them to eat, controlled where they slept, watched them on cameras in his house, urinated on them, raped them, and locked some women in a cupboard under his stairs for hours at a time. He threatened to use police baton on one of his victims, and another victim described him as acting like a monster and said he would call her his slave, asking her to take her clothes off while cleaning his house. He told another woman that he would pay her £1,000 a month to be his slut. Carrick was placed on remand at HMP Belmarsh Prison in May 2022. While there, he was interviewed by 2 female detectives, who said that initially he appeared a very charming person, but became more controlling as the interview progressed. Over the course of the case, 300 witness statements and around 4,000 pages of evidence were reviewed. Due to the weight of evidence against him, Carrick had no choice but to plead guilty in December 2022 at the Old Bailey Criminal Court. He pleaded guilty to 49 charges, including 24 of rape relating to 12 female victims. On 16th of January 2023 at Southwark Crown Court, he pleaded guilty to 4 more charges of rape. Carrick was sacked by the Met Police after his guilty pleas. He attempted suicide after his arrest, but it was described as being an act of self-pity rather than remorse for his victims, whose screams and sounds of suffering were said to excite him. Carrick, 48, stood in the dock at Southwark Crown Court, watched in person and via a video link by his victims, to be told by the judge that he was the latest high-profile example of a malign abuse of power by a man against women. The court heard how Carrick had spoken to a probation officer about suffering childhood trauma and about how he grew up with parents who drank to excess and of how he was abused by his stepfather. Alistair Williamson, KC defending, said Carrick accepts full responsibility for what he has done. He pointed out that one victim had noted that something profoundly damaged this man, saying Carrick was testament to how the abused can become the abuser. He cannot ask for mercy and does not, the barrister said. Victim after victim told the court how they were too scared to report him. The judge said Carrick had taken monstrous advantage of his position as a police officer, which gave him exceptional powers to coerce and control, and that he had betrayed his oath to protect the public and cause irretrievable devastation. The judge, Mrs. Justice Chi McGrob, ordered Carrick to appear in person for sentencing. She said, You behaved as if you were untouchable. You were bold and at times relentless, trusting that no victim would overcome her shame and fear to report you. For nearly 2 decades, you were proved right. Chima Grubb said of the women Carrick had attacked, "These women are not weak or ineffectual. They were victims of your criminal mindset. The malign influence of men like you in positions of power stands in the way of revolution of women's dignity." Carrick was sentenced to serve a minimum term of 32 years in prison before he can be considered for release. As the judge began her remarks, Carrick, in a dark grey jacket and tie, looked at her, but his gaze dropped to the floor as she detailed his crimes. His face remained expressionless. The judge said how he would endure a difficult time in custody, which would last until he is 78 years old, at the earliest. Carrick is currently being investigated over an alleged sex attack when he was 13 years old, widening the known timeline of his crimes. Police believe more victims are yet to be discovered, and their investigation into Carrick remains active. It is hoped that the case signals to women that the risk of the police, prosecution service, and courts failing them is outweighed by the justice it can bring.
Today is about recognising the outstanding bravery of the victims. It often takes courage for anyone to come forward and report a rape, but in this case, to overcome the mental and physical oppression they endured may have felt insurmountable at times. We've heard the accounts of women who suffered at Carrick's hands. He took away their control, their right to choose, their freedom, in some cases both physically and mentally. We cannot undo the pain and anguish that they have endured, but I hope that they can take this first step in rebuilding their lives, knowing that he can't harm them or any other woman. We are so grateful to every woman who has come forward and supported this case. With each report that came in, we had a clearer picture of who Carrick was and what he had done. The similarities between the victim accounts detailing mental and physical torment at the hands of the same man were our case. We would not be where we are today without you, the victims, taking that step forward and providing us with the vital evidence needed to prosecute Carrick. With your help, the Crown Prosecution Service worked with the investigation team at Hertfordshire Constabulary to build such a strong case that Carrick had no choice but to plead guilty. We know there are victims of other rape and serious sexual offences out there, and that many of you may be worried about being believed or whether you will ever see justice done. We understand these concerns and want to reassure you that we are doing everything that we can to improve how these offences are handled, and we are determined to see justice done for more victims of violence against women and girls. We hope seeing Carrick, a prolific abuser, manipulator and rapist behind bars, will encourage other women to come forward, knowing we will do all we can to hold the person responsible to account for their crime. Thank you.
The case rocked an already frayed trust and confidence in the Met, as one in an already long list of policing scandals. The Met Commissioner, Sir Mick Rowley, described Carrick as evil and acknowledged the damage to the force, which he vowed to reform. He said, "He exploited his position as a police officer in the most disgusting way. We weren't rigorous enough in our approach, and as a result, we miss opportunities to identify the warning signs over decades."
I'm punished for what he did to me because I honestly feel he's taken 20 years of my life away. We were chatting for probably about 10 or 15 minutes. He gets up and he goes to kiss me. I push him off and I said, no, I don't want anything. So I go to the bathroom. I'm in the bathroom and I think to myself, I need to get out of this situation. And he said, oh, I've called off the party. I'm a bit tired now. And I was like, oh, okay then, and took that as my cue to leave. And he comes out to the hallway, I hear him behind me, and he puts his right arm around my waist. And I go to turn around to push him off, and he puts his left hand over my mouth, and that's when the attack begins. all of a sudden there's this gun, and I just froze. And he looked at me and he said, "Look, you behave yourself and I'll let you go." And he just brushed it gently against my cheek. And I just thought, that's it, he's going to kill me. And I said to him, "Why do you have a gun?" And he said, "I like guns." He said, "How else am I going to shut you up?" And he knew that, to me, he knew he was inflicting an awful lot of pain. I remember at one point he bit into like my collarbone. I remember asking him to stop, and he didn't say anything. Well, he'd laugh, and I couldn't believe what he'd done to me. Obviously, I felt in a lot of pain. I knew I had bruising, but my back was covered, and I had bite marks and handprints on me. And I remember sitting in the bath crying, thinking, what have I done to deserve this? I can't believe that he's had these allegations on his file that have never been joined up. I think it's shocking that the police never thought to themselves, "Oh, hold on a minute, there's a pattern here." When I reported it to the police, I did say to them, "There's no way I'm the first. There's absolutely no way. It's too planned. It's too calculated. He's done this before." It must be devastating for them as well, because obviously there's all these police officers coming out with these other crimes, mainly against women, and to know that they weren't part of that unit, that force, must be soul destroying. I can't get back to who I was before. That one night changed the whole course of my life. I left a job that I was actually quite good at. I was saving up for my diploma at the time. I had a college place. I couldn't see a way forward. I didn't want to stand out from anyone else. I just wanted to disappear from the rest of the world. So I changed. I became a harder version of myself. And the fact that he was a serving police officer in the time frame that he was doing these attacks and using that to gain the trust of these women just makes me so angry that he continued. And regardless of my life, and I'm just one person, he's changed all these other women's lives by what he done.